Playing the same old version of chess has become boring over the years. It's just the same set of maneuvers and rules over and over again. That's why things need to be spiced up every so often, to help keep things exciting. True, some people find excitement in the nuances of the game, to see what will happen when facing an opponent of comparable skill, but not everyone. Some people need a major overhaul in order to feel engaged. Greetings and welcome back to Checkpoint Gaming, Chess. With this episode, we will be going over the variants to that of chess. The first variant we'll be looking at is that of rapid chess. Also known as rapid play, rapid chess is a variant where the players will have to complete all of their moves within a fixed amount of time. One option is to give each player an amount of time that lasts 10 to 60 minutes. Another option is to play within an allotted time given to each player plus that of 60 times any given increment as long as said time is greater than 10 minutes but less than 60. Some variants to this time allotment sees the minimum amount of time being that of 15 minutes instead of 10. When playing this variant of the game, although the players aren't required to record their moves, they also don't lose the right to claims that are normally found upon the score sheet. If playing in a tournament, the player can ask the arbiter to give them a score sheet at any time in order for them to record the moves. And in regards to the penalties that were mentioned in the previous episode, they shall consist of only a single minute instead of 2. If playing in a competitive setting, then the following rules are to be applied. This includes having an arbiter supervising 3 games at most, and, if possible, doing so through electronic means. Each player can at any time, when it is their turn to move a piece, to ask the arbiter or their assistant to show them their given score sheet, which can be done up to 5 times during any given game. Any requests that are of 6 or more is to be considered as a distraction and is to be penalized accordingly. Otherwise, the following rules are to be applied. From the initial position, once each player has completed 10 moves, no change is able to be made to the clock unless the event schedule would be adversely affected by it, and no claim is able to be made regarding any incorrect setup or orientation of the chessboard. In the situation where the king has been incorrectly placed, then castling is not allowed to occur. But in the case where a rook has been incorrectly placed, then castling is not allowed to occur with that given rook. If the arbiter witnesses an irregularity, they are to act according to the situation provided that the opponent has yet to make their next move. But if the arbiter doesn't get involved, then the opposing player is able to make a claim provided that the opposing player has yet to perform their next move. If the opponent doesn't make a claim and the arbiter doesn't get involved, then the illegal move is to stand and the game is to continue normally. Once the opponent has made their move, an illegal move isn't allowed to be corrected unless both players agree to correct it without the arbiter being involved. In order for a player to claim a win on time, they'll have to pause the chess clock and notify the arbiter. But with that said, the game is deemed a draw if the chess pieces are positioned in such a way that neither player is able to checkmate the other player's king through any possible series of legal moves. If the arbiter observes that both kings are in check, or one of the pawns is found on the furthest rank from its starting position, then they're to wait until the next move has been completed. From there, if an illegal position is still found upon the board, then they're to declare the game to be a draw. The arbiter is to also call a flag fallen if they observe it. And with the regulations found at a given event, they're to specify if the rules regarding arbiter supervision going forward for this particular game are to apply for the entire event. The second variant we'll be looking at is that of Blitz. With Blitz, it is when all of the players' move will have to be completed within a fixed amount of time, which is typically 10 minutes or less for each player. The game can also be played with the allotted time plus 60 minutes, with any given increment being that of 10 minutes or less for each player. A variant to this is to have the time limit be that of 15 minutes or less. So, like the name implies, this variant is meant to be played quickly. If playing the game in a competitive setting, then the following rules are to be applied. If enough supervision is available, then an arbiter is to supervise one game along with each game being recorded by the arbiter or their assistant. And if it's possible to do so, the game is to be recorded electronically. As long as it's the player's turn to move, the player can ask the arbiter or their assistant to show them the score sheet, which can be done no more than 5 times during the game, with any additional requests being considered a distraction. Beyond this, Blitz is governed by the rules that were covered in rapid chess. The event regulations will also specify what constitutes as penalties and what the competition regulations are going to be. And the third variant we'll be looking at is that of Chess 960. Before play begins, the starting positions of the pieces are going to be set up semi-randomly due to them being placed in accordance to some rules accompanied by player desire. From there, the game is to be played in accordance with the standard rules of chess. On top of this, the pieces and pawns operate with their normal moves, with the objective of each player being that of checkmating the opponent's king. With the starting positions, they have to meet certain requirements, with the white pawns being placed upon the second rank as usual. With the remaining white pieces, they're to be randomly placed upon the first rank with the following restrictions in place. First, the king will have to be placed anywhere between the two rooks. Second, the bishops will have to be placed upon opposite-colored squares. And third, the black pieces will have to be placed opposite the white pieces. So basically speaking, black will mirror white. We also welcome the snowflake shit show that'll come from that last sentence. With the determining of the starting positions, they can be done through a computer program, dice rolls, coin flips, cards, or any other method the players decide to use. When it comes to that of castling, it can only be done once per game, and involves both the king and a single rook, as discussed in an earlier episode. With that said, a new modification will have to be made to the rules regarding castling due to the nature of this variant. Depending upon the pre-castling positioning of the king and rook, castling can be done in one of 4 ways, which consists of double move castling, transposition castling, king move only castling, and rook move only castling. With that of double move castling, it is when performing a move with both the king and rook. With that of transposition castling, it is when the position of the king and rook are transposed. With that of king move only castling, it is when only the king is moved. And with that of rook move only castling, it is when only the rook is moved. When engaging in castling upon a physical board and with a human player, it is recommended that the king is removed from the board, placed next to its final position, the rook moved from its starting position to that of its final position, and then the king placed back onto the board in its final position. When castling has been completed, the final position of both the king and the rook will have to be exactly the same position as if done in a regular game of chess. So once C-side castling has been performed, which is to be noted as 0-0-0 upon the score sheet and known as queenside castling, the king is found in the C square and the rook is found in the D square. And with G-side castling, which is to be noted as 0-0 upon the score sheet and known as kingside castling, the king is found in the G square and the rook is found in the F square. In order to at least minimize confusion, it can be useful for a player to say, "I'm about to castle," before engaging in said action. With some starting positions, the king or rook will not move during the castling process, while some other starting positions can allow for castling to occur as a player's first move. It's just based upon the initial placement of the pieces. It is important to remember that all of the squares that are found between the initial and final squares of both the king and rook will have to be vacant except for the king and castling rook themselves. And depending upon the starting positions of the pieces, it is possible for some squares to remain filled during the castling process that would have to be vacant if playing regular chess. So with that said, that is what you need to know about the variants to that of chess. With that taken care of, we can start talking about blind and visually impaired players for that of chess. If you liked this episode, feel free to give it a like, and if you want to stay up to date on any future episodes we upload, go ahead and subscribe. You can also support us on Patreon for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/checkpointgaming. See you in the next episode, and happy gaming.